So first of all, thank you for letting me see your artwork and for letting me provide feedback and critique on this really solid piece. It looks really good. Your proportions are really nice, especially, let me get a little lighter pencil color here and on a different layer right above this one. So you're doing really good with your sense of head proportion, and how that fits into the body. I really like how you drew through here. I would encourage you to keep drawing through circles, and I'll get to a few points as to why you want to do that. The face also has really nice proportion. I can see that you're drawing on thirds and really nice, like if I divide it up by classical proportion. It looks really, really nice. So just a few notes that I'll go through here. You told me that you were using this as a reference, and I want to say that it is good reference for breaking down the musculature. The artist was really focused on making the muscle really clear, and he did do that, especially in here. These are particularly difficult to manage because as you can see on this model, sorry if that's a little blurry, these things stay separate from those that connect. So we kind of have these different areas of muscle that are these, and I'll use a different color. Then there's these ones. So this first group that connects to that side under the arm muscle, and then the one that's more straight over the ribs. And then the last group, which I'm going to ignore these in here for favor of the abdomen, that goes to the abdomen. So I can see that you did that. You have your abdomen muscles here grouped, and then you have these secondaries, and then you have these ones that connect the chest to the side. And so you did a really good job of that here. The arms look very much in proportion. And nice job not making him too thin. Stylistically, this artist did make it very thin, very, very thin. And you can see that kind of here in the model. The models are pretty thin as well, but that's because they're posing for a fitness photo. Now I want to get into a few things that will help this drawing feel more natural. And the first concept that I want to talk about is Controposto, which is the idea that people never stand straight up and down. This guy is making a pose to stand straight up and down, but you can see like he looks like he's straight standing straight like that, right? But that's not very natural, and it's actually not what the artist has done here. You can see that there's a curve to the spine. I'm gonna get a different brush that maybe will be more clear. You can see that there's a curve to the spine which affects the way that the collarbone sits, the way that the arms come up above the head, rather than this straight on pose where the weight is evenly distributed. Now you can do evenly distributed weight, but it doesn't look very natural. Like this guy looks really stiff. And most people don't stand that way. So I encourage you to, your figure looks pretty, if I draw kind of a rudimentary spine, pretty straight up and down, which isn't bad at all. But to look more natural, we want to put a curve in there because more people stand this way, and you'll find that later on when you're practicing figure drawing, it's going to add more variety and beauty to this. Now, this guy didn't complete this drawing, but the hips would be opposite. There's always a opposite and equal reaction whenever the spine is curved. So if the spine curves like this, and the shoulders are going like this, the hips will go the opposite way, the knees will go the opposite way, and the feet will go the opposite way. Okay? And that's kind of how we'll make a figure look more like a natural pose rather than this one, where they're just standing straight on, which is fine. But you'll see which one looks more natural. This one looks more natural, correct? And that's Controposto, uneven weight. So I would encourage you to, since there is a bit of a setup in here where you have taken the spine, and I'll get to the fact that the neck is not actually ever a straight line. The neck is always a curve. It's actually doing that all the time. It's a curve, it's a curve. When we turn our heads to the side, say we got a head, it's always a curve. In fact, if you have an injury and it's straight, which I've had, that's a bad sign. So you've indicated that because you've been following what this artist did with the curve of the neck, especially with the weight of the hands on top of the head, the neck would be compressed even more. And you do have a bit of that spine curvature. I can tell because of the way that the hip muscles are sitting and the way that this comes around. So don't be afraid to draw a spine all the way through. I like drawing hips as sort of a bowl or I wouldn't say butterfly shape, but I don't find that drawing them straight across, except to just demonstrate the weight, is very helpful. But I can see that you've got the Controposto coming in already, which implies that your figure is standing with the weight more on one foot. We always put more of our weight on one foot than the other. Either he's standing like that or like this. There's going to be a slight bend to the spine. Okay, and I think I mentioned before when muscles, let me get rid of these lines, are fighting gravity, they're going to be bigger. And you can see a good example of that in these ones, which this artist has exaggerated to be huge. You can see on these figures that maybe they're not as large because they wrap around the front. But because he's trying to show you the angle of the figure's right side, so this side being more towards the front, only slightly. That's why this looks so big. And I think actually this probably should be smaller, but this is obviously a more quick ink sketch rather than a full study. So don't be afraid to bring this all the way out, since you're following that as well, to really give these arm muscles a place to sit in and rest on. Okay, because that unlike what he's done here, the arm muscles kind of go down into the armpit and sit inside of this side muscle. And then because we've got a slight, just a slight, this side being more towards the front, this side being more towards the back. Another thing I like to do is to get the perspective right, because everything is always in perspective, is to do a perspective box around the figure that I'm drawing. That way I kind of know the center and everything. And if these are a lot of concepts, feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to help you out with that. Just to get a sense of, and obviously this would be way further down by his feet. And that way I can figure out, okay, there's the center of where I'm looking, because my eye line is always, I'm always looking up or down at something. And that way I know, oh, okay, that's kind of the box that the figure is in. So I know what's coming forward in space and what's going backward in space. Okay, and that's just something that you can have behind the sketch and eventually get rid of. Another note is these hands, while you can do them on top of the head, you can see in these bodybuilder photos that most of the time they have their hands behind their head. So if you want to cheat and put the hands behind the head, I think you can absolutely do that. If you don't want to do that and you want to follow kind of the way this guy has the arms going backwards, and if you want to draw hands, by all means do that. But otherwise, I would cheat, and not cheat, it's just following figure, and put them further behind. And put them behind the head. And make sure you know what's in front and what's in back. Like the elbow here is going to be in front, which is why he's got these little lines indicating this. Then as we go back, we have these big muscles and then the smaller ones. Again, the elbow, arm muscles, and on the back. Okay. This is a note about drawing through. My second thing is the mass of the neck and shoulders. The back is always larger than the front. And that's important to know because when you do figure studies and when you draw through, you're knowing that this figure is sitting on this whole back. That's pretty big. Like if I draw the head from above, this is the nose. The ears is the back of the head. The collarbone sits about there. Here's our shoulders. Chest muscles only end up being about that large. And the back, which supports most of our body, is about that big. Okay? He's not really showing, this guy isn't really showing the reference you use, the back, but you can see here how much it affects these guys. And so I want you to keep that in mind. Just something to remember when you're drawing. Okay. Next up is landmarks. Landmarks are extremely important. There's a few that I got in here: the ears, the nose, the elbows, and the collarbone. The collarbone is something that you can't really see in this figure drawing, but you can see it very clearly in the models. Like this is where their collarbone is. It's the only reason we have that indentation, and he seems to be lacking that on this part of the reference. And that's really important to have. I think I brought that up in live. And then the ears are an important landmark. You always want to know where the ears go. And the top of the ear basically aligns with the middle of your eyes. So knowing that. And the bottom, it ends right where the jaw, unless you have freakishly small ears like mine, right where the jaw starts to curve down. That's really important to know, because when I look at these ears, where are they? They're in the center of this bicep, which you've done really well. Great job on the proportions. And he has that there too, but here you can see he's fudged it a little bit. Like really the bicep should be coming down here. Like we shouldn't be seeing this coming up quite so high. And the ear should be aligning more with the bicep. You see that little fix, how it just kind of made it a bit more, but you already did that. So congrats. Let's see, the ears. The nose is a very, very important landmark, anatomically speaking. Very, 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 very important. And in anime, it gets fudged a lot. But the nose is essential for indicating perspective. This nose, it's a little unclear what's going on. Is it pointing up or down? I'm guessing it's kind of straight on. And there are ways to indicate that with the nose, but also the nose is a key to showing that your face is not facing straight forward. So if I draw a head, and I got the nose, right where my ears are, I want to keep in mind that the nose is made of a set of a lot of triangles. And I need to remember that it has a lot of mass, because otherwise we couldn't breathe with it. When you're doing realistic drawing like this, doing a more stylized nose, like the one you've done here, is okay, but it can look a little bit out of place. So want to remember that because his head is down, the figure you drew. It's a bit more like this nose. And it's just good to look at reference for noses, just draw from reference of them, just so you can get the sense of what they look like from a lot of angles, because they're very complicated. They basically have a frontal part, then our little flappies, and a lot of construction. There's the bridge, there's the sides. Noses are very, very complicated. So just keep that in mind, because I noticed here is that you've indicated that these are almost even, and then we have this. And that's okay, but in perspective, I might not be able to see this side of the nostril. I might only be able to see that side, and this might be an indication of the edge of the nose instead. So maybe just altering that to more of, maybe you can see a bit of that underside of the nostril, but a bit more like that. And then keep in mind that your eyes might be a little bit high, because if we're using the ears as a landmark, might want to bring the eyes down to there, so that the top of the ears intersect with, like if you drew a line straight across, the pupil. And that's still true even in a case like this. Down here on this guy, you can see the top of his ears, and I'll erase to show you. You can see the top of his ears align with, if I drew a line, a perspective line, with his pupils. Okay? That looks funny. Okay, and then you said that the head was feeling big, but I don't think it feels big at all. Make sure again that you're drawing all the way through. You want to draw circles, and then if anything, you want to give a little bit more space in that jaw, just to make him look a bit more adult, a bit more proportional. Okay, and then by all means, feel free, if you don't want to bother drawing the legs, cut off the drawing. All right, so that's the figure drawing part. Now I'm going to talk about, you asked about tight clothing. And for tight clothing, I want you to think of cling wrap. Let me do another layer. Cling wrap. Cling wrap is a great example because it shows off exactly what we're talking about. You can also see through it the muscle, and you can practice you can just practice drawing the shapes that the cling wrap makes. Cling film, I don't know what people call it. The shapes that it makes when it pulls on tension. And that's an easy thing to get from life, from photos and whatnot. And you can also spend time drawing people. Henry Cavill is a great example. He's so buff. He's huge, just like your reference. Just like that. And this is a great example of what I'm talking about, where we have my area that's pulling and then the tension that goes out from it. A few principles I want you to remember for tight clothing is where are the broad, smooth places. That's this. That pull and create the tension. Again, broad, smooth place, pulls and creates tension. Versus the places where the muscles meet. And that's places like in here. To a different color. Where the muscles meet in here, in here, in here, they meet on his little nipples. And there, and then here. And we can see that on here too. There and there. And that'll help you know, okay, well, what's creating tension? What's pulling? Where does it go smooth? Where does it go flat and broad? Muscles versus pits. You know, the pits of where our muscles come together and meet. That's areas like this, areas like this. We're not going to have a lot of tension lines as much when we're drawing over the smooth areas versus where we're going to have where the muscles meet. Okay, because I know you're trying to draw this cute sweater. And when something is like really tight, there is a lot of smoothness. Like you can think of like spandex, but you know, the wrinkles are sexy. And gravity always wins. So we can have lines that kind of, you know, feel like they're defying gravity, like these over here. But truthfully, even though his muscles are creating a lot of tension, this fabric is still being pulled down by gravity always. Which is why the majority of our lines are going to follow the flow of gravity, and you can see that even on the tight spots. So when in doubt, if a line feels sort of unrealistic, like you're coming along, you're rendering, and maybe you do something, I don't know, that you don't feel super happy with, always try to go back and remember, okay, well, yeah, this is going over those muscles, but I'm going to follow the lines of gravity to indicate what's going on. That's a bit on tight clothing. And just remember, you know, if you don't like something, less is more, erase. Find any sort of reference to help you. This is a really good one that you can cheat with, and just cut a hole, cut a heart-shaped hole. There's your sweater. So really nice job, really well done. I love what you're doing here. I love what you've done with your figure. Just remember these few points. And it's a lot of information, I know. Oops. It's a lot of information, but you've already done so well. Like, just keep drawing and remember these things. And yeah, thanks for letting me offer you some advice.